then raises a question about evolution, and she writes, "Recently I got very confused in the matter of evolution. My teacher, who is a Catholic Christian, said that she believes in evolution. However, if she is a Christian, why does she believe in evolution if she knows that in the Bible it says that Adam was created from clay, which is also mentioned in the Holy Quran?" It's obviously a statement, but what she's sort of talking about is the compatibility of religious belief with the concept of evolution. Azhar Hanif Saab.
Yes, well, I'm going to take advantage of my brother here who can see the verses in Genesis right in the beginning where it speaks about the creation of man, and it'll throw some light on the struggle which people are now undergoing in the Christian world. As Muslims, we never had an issue with it because we understand that Allah is the developer of human life and all life, from stages, from lower stages to higher stages. So there's a natural evolution in this whole process, according to Islam. It didn't begin and end with 6 days of creation. It's been going on for millions and billions of years. That's the beauty of it. However, within that understanding, there are some Muslims who have the exact same concept that Adam was created from clay. Allah took some clay together and shaped it, and then he breathed through his nostrils into this creation, and there was a man. Yeah. And from that he takes a piece and creates the woman, and there's his mate, and now the Garden of Eden has begun with Adam and Eve. There are some Muslims who believe this, but the Quran definitely is against it. I am not one to answer her why this Christian lady believes, which is not the policy of the Catholic Church. This is the point. Any Christian is at liberty to believe or reject whatever they wish in terms of the policy of that church. And some of them know the policy of abortion is very clear, but some of them go ahead and do abortion. Some of them, so many different things. So she should not be concerned with what an individual Christian is doing, as opposed to what is the policy of the church. It's based on this understanding of Genesis, where later on in the Bible, where you see the reference, which he can read out.
Yeah. So this is the part which is relating to the creation of man, and we're on the 6th day now. And here it's written that then God said, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, and over every living creature that moves on the ground." Then God said, "I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth and all the birds of the air and all the creatures that move on the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food." And it was so. And God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the 6th day.
So that's straight from Genesis. I mean, we're again into this literal and metaphoric interpretations of scriptures, and as you pointed out as well.
In terms of the Catholic teaching, it is very literal. This is not a symbolic or metaphoric, or this is not some discussion of how God may have done it in billions of years, but it's describing it in these 6 days. They say in 6 days. This is creation theory, which is now being forced upon the American students as a theory of science of how the world came into being. And they are very adamant and very forceful in trying to present this theory. So I say to the questioner that, look, ask her why she has rejected the policy of her own faith. And if she gives the answers, well, I have found in this Genesis story some glaring inconsistencies. For instance, you go back a few verses where God says he creates the sun and the moon. It's on the 4th or 5th day. If this is when 24 hours began, how can those first few days be considered an actual day as we understand it?
Of course.
There was no sun, there was no moon, there was no way to calculate a day as they're understanding it. And so perhaps she's seeing these things, and when that happens, and say, Alhamdulillah, you understand now what we mean from the Holy Quran, that this was not 6 days, these are 6 periods, and this is a better way to understand your scripture, by going through the verses of the Holy Quran, which opens up the reality of how God has been creating this world.
Yep. Jazakallah, Hazrat Sahib, Jahangir Sahib, just to cast some light on there, just to sort of complete the question, from an Islamic perspective, this whole issue again of evolution, creation, what's the perspective, the Ahmadiyya Muslim perspective?
Well, the Ahmadiyya Muslim perspective, I can't go into all the intricacies of it because it's the whole process of evolution as such. What I'd like to say, perhaps this question will come again, so we can touch upon it and perhaps in future programs as well. But the whole process has been described in the Holy Quran. But the one part of the process which has been raised here is the clay part of it.
Indeed.
Now, as Azhar Sahib has said, and very rightly so, that if they want to understand their own scripture, they should refer to the Holy Quran, where they'll find the proper interpretation of their own scripture. Now, it's a fact that it is mentioned in the Christian scriptures that Adam was made of clay. It's also a fact that man was made of clay in the Quran as well. But in the Quran, God also explains different phases by which this has passed. And He says that man was created from dry, ringing clay, meaning clay so dry that if you hit it, it would ring. And now, only recently, in recent years, in the last 20 years or so, it has been discovered that the earliest chemical reactions that were happening in the oceans, which led thereon to the first forms of life, were reversible ones. They were reversible reactions, and so once a reaction had taken place, it would immediately revert back to its primitive state again. Mm-hmm. And so it would not have been able to be carried further to the next step. But it so happened that very, very dry clay played a role, where some of the droplets out of the ocean, because of the ocean spray, where those reactions were actually happening at that very instant, it must have happened many times over, struck that clay, were absorbed by the clay, and immediately dried and freezed where they were. So they couldn't revert back to what they were before. The molecules couldn't separate again. And then, with the reaction, because they were in the clay, there could be further reactions taking place with the atmospheric gases of the time, and that then became, they brought it on to the next step, and those reactions were irreversible. So once that had happened, it could not go back again. Then it was returned to the water, and the process continued. So dry, ringing clay played an essential role in the creation of man. But there's also the metaphorical interpretation of it, because wet clay is also mentioned as part of the evolution of man, but that's in a spiritual sense, in the sense that man has a nature which is malleable.
Yes.
And wherever man goes, he will become influenced by that milieu, by that environment. And if man is in the wrong company, because he's like, malleable clay, he'll take on the shape, whatever shape that company gives, and he will become evil as well. But if he is in godly company, then he'll become godly. So this is also another explanation which is not given in the Bible, but which is given in the Quran. So Christians are invited to come and read the Quran and read the commentary, and they'll gain in their own reading of their scriptures.